welcome back to the shop. Appreciate you coming back. Today we're going to do some maintenance on a friend of mine's 350X. It's a beautiful machine. It's probably the nicest one that's ever been in this building. And because of that, we're going to take some precautions and be super careful. Videos cut up over a couple days as parts have come in. Today what we're going to do is we're going to change the oil. Just do a basic service on getting this 350X ready to hit the trail. We've got a ride plan coming up. And as the weather gets a little bit nicer, it's going to get a little cooler, and we're going to go on a few rides, and hopefully we're going to bring you along for that. But we've got to get this machine ready to rock and roll. So that said, I'm going to take it apart, and you're going to see me drain the oil into kind of a opaque, clear container. And the reason for that is I want to be able to show my buddy the oil, what it looks like. He hasn't had this machine very long. This may be the first oil change it's received since his ownership. And because of that, he kind of wants to know the internals, you know, what did he buy? And so I think that kind of goes a long way. One of the first things I like to do with any purchase, did it with my tractor, did it with my truck, anything that really doesn't have a dealer warranty or somebody else to take care of it, is I'm going to tear it apart as soon as I get it. I want to look and see what I have purchased, what might have been covered up, what might not have been disclosed when I purchased it, anything like that. And I'm not saying that you know, somebody didn't tell the truth. You just need to know going forward. So when I buy something, I completely service it, even if it's already been done by, you know, if I was told that it was done by the seller, I'm going to go ahead and service it. And that way I know from day one of my ownership going forward, everything is the way it's supposed to be. All the fluids are chopped off. And that goes for my three-wheelers, my pickup trucks, anything with a motor on it, generators that you buy used. It doesn't necessarily have a warranty on it. You need to service it as soon as you get it. That way you know what you've got. So let's check this machine out, and I'll tear it apart, and we'll talk about it a little bit. We'll get ready to do that oil change. Parts you're going to need for this is you're going to need some paper towels, because I'm messy. We're going to need an oil filter. Now the 350X does have an oil filter, just like an automotive oil filter. This is a Honda oil filter. It also has a metric now. So if you tear this, break this, and need to replace it, when you go to your parts house, you want a metric. You're going to need a socket. You're going to need an Allen wrench. If you've got the factory drain bolt in the bottom of the engine, which this one does, you're going to need an Allen wrench for that. We're going to go ahead and put a new Uni air filter on here. As you see, it's listed the 200X or the 350X. This is a great air filter. It really is easier maintenance. They hold up a long time, and they don't hold the dirt that your traditional paper filters, even those red ones that are real fancy. These are better, especially in a dusty environment. And so my buddy's brought over some oil. This is our actually Honda oil. And if you don't know, because I wasn't 100% sure, but this one actually is for 2 strokes and 4 strokes. So you're going to see us use the remainder of this in another machine coming up on a future video. But yeah, you can pick this up at your dealer. You can order it online if you want. This is what his machine, this is the way he wants it done, so that's how we're going to do it. But it is a beautiful 1985 350X. It has all of the good stuff. You know, metal tank looks really good. These are original fenders. They do have a little road rash on them, but they are original. We have the highly regarded mud flap on the back. This flap right here, y'all, I have seen just this piece of plastic, just the black part. One of these just sold on eBay for like $700, just the plastic part. So I'm going to take that off very carefully. We've got a really nice chrome 6-pack rack on here with the flag mount, which is really cool. This one's really robust. You can tell, see how the bracing and the way it comes in. It doesn't just clip on the grab handle. It actually is intended to become the grab handle. That's why it has such bracing on it. So it's just a really, really nice machine. It's just really nice. It's got some personalization. He's got some ODI grips. He likes those. And so, you know, I'm a firm believer you need to make the machine yours a little bit and make it comfortable for you. Otherwise, you're not going to enjoy it. And, you know, if they all looked right out of the factory, well, then they'd all look right out of the factory. I mean, this is his, and that's how you know it. So let's tear it apart. We're going to take this fender and very carefully, we're going to go place it somewhere very safe. All right, now that's out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and pull the tank. You're going to see this video is going to be cut up a couple different ways. The tank's got to come off. We're going to clean the tank inside and out. We're also going to replace the petcock in it. It does have an aftermarket cap here. You look inside the tank is amazing. Remember guys, 200X, 250Rs, 350Xs. If you've got scoops and you don't want to take them off, elevate the tank from the bottom. Just like that, take a little block of wood and stick underneath it. Support your tank. Don't let your fins touch. They're just not made to support the weight of the tank, especially if there's fuel in it. All right, this is one of those jobs where if you have a lift that supports the bottom, it's kind of in the way. You got an Allen head bolt. All right, now if you don't have, if it's been on there a long time, and you know, most of these things, the oil changes probably weren't at the recommended interval in the last 30 years for sure. So if you're going to use this type of Allen key versus a, wow, the mosquitoes. You can use a cheater. I'll just use a box end wrench and I'll place it over the end. Be sure your Allen key is seated really good. I made sure the hole that the Allen key goes in was cleaned out. You see the debris here on the floor. Make sure that key seats in there really good. And then you take a flat end or a box end wrench. Swap to a bigger wrench for a little more leverage. I'm concerned about that now. Alright. A little vibration sent through that bolt is kind of a good thing. Make sure your wrench is good and seated. This one is being a little stubborn. Now I will tell you that your wrench can slip on this, so be careful. A small piece of pipe would work really well too. Woo. Oh, wow. Okay. Not good. There we go. Whew, scared me a little bit. Probably gonna make a big mess here. Anybody want to guess? Fast forward, there's gonna be a big puddle of oil on the floor. Puddle of oil on the floor. Puddle of oil on the floor. Well, we made a big mess. Good thing we were trying not to make a mess. Just think if we were trying to make a mess. You know, the paper towels are all the way on the other side of the shop right now. So this is what that bolt looked like. See, it's got a hex head in it. Man, somebody really hammered this thing on here. It's got an aluminum washer. Look at the washer. Look how it's actually, it's not flat anymore. Somebody really over torqued that. My goodness. Threads look good though. That was what I was concerned about. All right. So when you're draining your oil like that, be sure that you open your fill, and it's always good to check how much oil's in there before you take it out. It's just good to know, especially if it's not your machine. First thing you want to make sure what you've got in here. And I normally don't do work for other people. This is kind of a special situation, and so you just never know what you're going to run into. Drain plug could have been stripped out. That's the toughest one I've ever had to take out. All right, we've got our sample cod in our white jug. I went ahead and swapped out to a proper oil drain can. I will tell you, this was a friend of mine's, and I'll show it to you. And he gave it to me. He brought it over and he gave it to me. He saw I was using just a traditional pan, and he said, man, this is the way to go. And I kind of looked at it and was like, well, here's the story on it. We had a hurricane and there were no gas cans available, and the gentleman that had this was traveling and he needed gas. He was scared that he was going to get somewhere with no electricity or not be able to get any fuel, and there was no gas cans in the auto parts store. And so he bought this. He actually bought 4 of these, and so he put fuel in them and it worked. It's got an O-ring seal for the drain here, and it sits up on this, and he tied them all up in the back of his truck, and he drove out of harm's way. And when he got home, he was like, well, I don't need 4 oil catch cans. And so he gave this to me, and Mark, I appreciate it if you're watching. I use it, I like it, and if you're a weekend warrior like me, you can change your oil in it, you can put the cap on it, you can put this in the bed of your truck, and it will hold probably 2 or 3 oil changes from a car. I think it probably holds 6 gallons probably. And it's got an easy spout to pour out the back end. I'm not trying to sell it to you. I'm just telling you, if you see one of these, they work really good. All right, well, while we let that drain, the drain plug is still out, as you see it's dripping there. I like to get as much out as possible. So I'll leave the drain plug out, our dipstick is out. And so the filter is located right here. Now you'll find this same design in the 350D and of course even in the 300s, and the SX has a captured filter. It's pretty simple. The biggest difference to the to the 350X is this upper intake line is a little different. It's actually part of this housing. It can be problematic. There's an O-ring that sits on a little post that these 2 bolts push in and seats that O-ring, and I've had that O-ring go bad. I've had that O-ring split and then leak, and it leaks behind here, and it's just a big mess. So I'm going to advise, if you can, and we're going to see every one of these is a little different, we're going to try to pull this filter housing off without disrupting this O-ring. If we have to take it off, it's 2 10mm bolts. The only way to get to it without removing the exhaust, which we're not going to do, pretty straightforward. I do not use an impact on these. They're just little bitty bolts. They're very long. I don't know who worked on this thing, but they are making me very, very nervous. I don't know if y'all can feel the tension here, but there's some tension in the shop. Working on somebody else's stuff is different. You just never know what you're coming behind, and that's really the reason I don't work on other people's things. I really try not to. This is a special situation here, and you break one of these off, and then you've got to, you know, tap it or drill it, or I mean, replace half the case. I mean, you just these kind of jobs, they scare me. That's why, if it's my own machine, so we do have a thread pull out right there, half a turn, and if someone's over torqued these and put too much pressure on them, you're certainly going to do that. Hopefully that's the only thing that we found, but that one's good. That one's good too. I'm just kind of checking to see if I can roll a thread out like I did on that first one. All those bolts are the same. They should be. I'm just kind of lining them up here. Actually, this one, showing one of these, this bottom one was shorter on this machine. I don't remember that. All right, so when I pull this out, everything's just going to get real messy. All right, this oil was really overdue. And so here's our filter. This is what we're going after, and this is a little more, it would be easier to take this line off from a standpoint of easier to get the filter in and out, but because these O-rings go bad, if you don't have to take it apart, don't. So remember the orientation of our filter, that the rubber O-ring is kind of closest to us, and then the solid part was actually against the back, and what you're going to find is there's going to be a spring that sits here. We'll just set that filter to the side. I'd like to inspect it. Let's see if we can get in there and get you a better view. Now we got lucky, and the spring is actually stuck on the back. There's some kind of fingers on the back side of the housing that spring seats on, and most of the times, I'll tell you, most of the times that spring falls off. It's kind of a bear to get back in there. I'm going to take some paper towels and some brake clean. I'm probably going to rinse that out just a little bit. Just to get as much as that old oil out as we can, and I'm going to let this sit here and drip. Again, we do want to get this O-ring off the back of this housing. See if we can do that without taking it completely apart. It comes with the filter, guys, so go ahead and change it. It's always good maintenance. That's why they send it with you. Go ahead and change it out. Let's just go ahead and take the spring out. So there's the spring I was referring to. So your spring's non-directional. Really doesn't matter which way it goes in or out. Just be sure you have it. If you do not have this, oil is going to go around your filter and not through it. You're not going to have the oil pressure you need to oil the top of this engine. And this engine specifically It's very important that you get plenty of oil to these valves. I've only worked on a handful of these, but almost every single one of them has had valve train problems, and I believe that's from a poor amount of oil. Probably not from the design of the engine, but probably comes down to poor maintenance. A dirty filter, not enough oil getting to the top by the restrictions. And I'm just wiping this out on the inside, y'all. I'm gonna put a little brake clean on my towel, not inside the machine. And I just kind of want to wipe it down. I don't think this machine's been serviced in a while. This oil is really dirty. I'm going to cut this filter open and I'm going to look a little deeper into it and see what we can find in there. Now that we've got our housing cleaned up inside and out, I'm not worried about the spring yet, because I'm going to be fumbling around in there, and the spring just barely sits there as it is. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to take our new filter here and new O-ring. My hands are pretty oily, so I'm just going to kind of rub the O-ring down. I'm going to slide it in the back side, and on the outer housing here, there's a little lip that O-ring sits on, and it's just goes around just like that, and it's a round O-ring. And what I mean by that is it doesn't have a flat side, so it really can't get cocked. What you want to do is just make sure it's seated all the way around and that area is clean. So that takes care of the O-ring aspect of this. We're pretty simple. It's not that bad, but you definitely want to change that. And when you're buying your oil filters, you will find a lot of these come without the O-ring. If you're not buying Honda, if you're buying aftermarket, a lot of them are sold without the O-rings, so you're going to want that. So we're going to take our spring, and you're going to see the little fingers that sit in there. We're just going to balance it right there, if it will balance. I've seen some of these balance and some won't. This one's going to balance. If yours does not stay put, elevate your right rear tire to the machine is kind of at an angle, and that will help the spring stay put. Get your spring in place, then place your filter, put your housing on, and then you can lower the machine back down without fear of it moving. Remember how our filter sits, that the black O-ring faces us. I'm just going to take a little oil here on my finger, just a little dab, just kind of lubricate that up a little bit. There is a post on the inside. There's a passage where the oil is actually run through this outer housing and into the filter and then out of the filter, and that's how it filters from the inside out. Okay, so our spring's in place. I'm going to capture that spring with the back of the filter. I'm going to kind of hold it precariously there. Move around to the outside, center it on our housing. And that's pretty much it. We've replaced our O-ring, our spring's in place, and we've got a brand new filter in the right orientation. Now, I believe these 3 bolts are the same length, but this machine, that's not the case. So I'm going to put them back. I made note of where the short one came from. We're going to put them back exactly like they were, but not quite as tight. Personally, I'd rather have a little bit of a leak to fix than to have to fix a broken bolt, especially inside the side of the case. I'm going to hand tighten these. I'm not using an impact at all on this job. These bolts are just so small. They're basically 8 millimeters, and when you run these down, don't just tighten one all the time. Do kind of a crisscross pattern, just like you would lug nuts or a valve cover or something like that. And you'll see this cover kind of walk its way in. It actually sets in on that O-ring, so you want to walk it in evenly all the way around. Snug them up. Now this machine does have a dipstick. You know, a lot of them do, a lot of them don't, and so we're going to certainly use that. I can't tell you how many milliliters this one takes. We took out probably 2 quarts. Wow, that feels really weird right there. I don't like that at all. All right. So we've got our drain plug back in. We're ready to fill our our machine up here. Now this particular machine, like I said, does have a dipstick, and so when you're checking your oil on a Honda, is you don't screw this in to check it. You got your hash marks here, low and high. What you want to do is you just want to sit it to where it's seated, and then you pull it back out, and that's the reading you take. You do not screw it in and then screw it out to take your reading. Check it. As you see, we're just below our high mark. Now I will say, this machine's still not running yet. When we get it running, we're gonna recheck our oil. We wanna make sure that our filter is full. That's gonna hold a pretty good amount of oil. It's also gonna pump oil to the top of the head. It's gonna pump it up into the cooler. We wanna double check everything. Since we have a no run condition right now, I'm just servicing here, starting with all the basics. And just like that, that is an oil change on a 350X. But whatever you do, do not use an impact on these bolts. All right, I'm gonna try to film this with the camera plugged in, so I've lost my microphone, but let's see what we got. So here's our filter. Basically, I just kind of want to try to separate this as neatly as I can. Basically what we're looking for is any type of metal, anything that's, I'm not seeing anything. You know, we found a couple small pieces when we just flakes, really. I think we're good, I really do. I think the machine's okay. On the inside, just little things. When you buy something new, this is what you need to do the first time for sure. We got a couple little flakes in here, but nothing crazy. I mean, this is all real normal wear and tear. Actually, it looks really good. I'm not seeing hardly anything. It's very messy though. And as for what our oil, I really want this to sit, and then I'm going to drop a magnet down in it and see what I can pick up. But as you can see, it's just really dirty. As I move it away from the sides, it just, there's nothing that, I don't see anything that's alarming at this point. I think it was just really overdue for an oil change. All right, as always, I appreciate it. That is an oil change on a 350X. Use quality parts. Be sure and change that O-ring out. Be sure and fire up your machine after you've put the oil in it, and then check your fluids again. Remember, this machine's got an oil pump. It's going to send oil to the top. It's going to push it up into the cooler. Just be sure you have plenty of oil in the machine, and honestly, just my opinion, I would rather have a little too much oil in the machine than not enough oil. The reason being is because this machine, one of its prone characteristics is to starve oil to the top of the head. So if you've got a little extra in there, I don't think it's going to hurt. Be sure and change your oil. I would say seasonally, annually, once a year, however you want to say it. Before every riding season, it's a good idea to change your oil. Check it every time you ride. You just don't ever want to run one of these low on oil. The ramifications of that is wiping out the cam. These cams are almost impossible to find. Rockers are the same way. That upper valve train on these particular engines is just very expensive when you do find them. Getting a cam reground is a 6-month waiting period. By the time you order a cam, riding season's over. So please do your maintenance. Certainly change your oil, change your filter, and always keep an eye on it. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Y'all have a great day, and we'll see you soon.